Good morning. Welcome to Tom's Tinkering and Adventures. Thanks for joining me for some breakfast here at home. So, been home a little bit over a day. Excuse me, got some morning coffee here. Been home a little bit more than a day. Just been kind of reflecting on my trip and relaxing, and I actually had to help a friend. He was moving into his home, so look at that, I'm only home for a day and already getting to work here. One thing I haven't done yet is unpack the bike. I actually rode it, parked it in the garage, and haven't even really looked at it. So today we're going to go unpack the bike and take a look at some of the stuff on the bike, and I can kind of go over the items that I used and things that I would change and things that I would keep, just a few things like that. So we'll see you out in the garage after I finish my toast. So we got a ant problem here in the Tom's Tinkering and Adventures Global Domination headquarters, and they've even decided that they like my motorcycle for some reason. Now I do probably still have some food somewhere on here. Well, yeah, there's some food in the bag, but I just can't imagine that that's what they're attracted to. But I don't know. But I guess I'll work around the ants. I'll start unpacking this, and we'll start talking about the items that I used and didn't use, and what I liked and didn't like. So the ants seem to like my garage for some reason. And they're even getting on my riding suit here. Maybe they like eating the dead bugs on here. I don't know. Look at them. Maybe it's my garage sign. I don't know. But before I can get started on a motorcycle, it's time to set up a home barrier. Screw you, ants. So I'll be back in a minute. I'm gonna go around and spray all around the house. Trap them in here, and then I'm gonna get rid of them. Okay, so I got the ants sprayed, and we'll see how that works. But I have stripped down the bike. It looks a little bit different for those of you who've been paying attention. Stripped it down, pulled all the boxes off of it here, and I've laid it all out. There's my bags that strapped over the tank, my magnetic tank bag, my dry bag. This is the contents of the left pannier, contents of the right, and then that's most of what was in the top box. I really didn't have a lot in there. The only other thing I had in there really most of the time was my atlas and maybe a bottle of water. But, oh yeah, through some mathematical formulas here, I stepped on the scale, weighed myself, and I'm a muscular and svelte lightweight. Won't discuss what that is on here, but I held each one of these items and stepped onto it, did a little subtraction and a little addition, and let's see, the final number is 94 pounds. So I had roughly 94 pounds worth of gear, food, clothing, and etc. on here on the bike during this trip. Now that number probably went up and down over time here. I've added some items. There's some items on here that my sister actually gave me when I was visiting, and then I sent some stuff home with my wife when she was visiting me as well. And the number, like I said, the number fluctuate, but we'll just go with I had approximately 100 pounds worth of gear on the bike for this trip. So, and that's not including, of course, the weight of the boxes. And I didn't take off my additional fuel. This, I never used that. I brought that along. It's a 1 liter fuel canister. Never used it. Well, actually, I take it back. I did use it one time to help start a campfire, but I did not need it for the motorcycle. But let me start going through some of this stuff here. Let me see if I get a place to set this camera. we'll start going through some of the stuff and see what I used, what I didn't use, and what I would change if I was to do it again here. All right. So we can start with this little strap tank bag thing here. So inside of this, I got some WD-40. Now this I didn't bring along with me. I picked this up in Alaska after I had issues with the bike. But I just carried it with me. I figured it's okay to have. First aid kit, never used it. Would I bring it again? Absolutely. Bear spray, another item I didn't start out with, picked it up in Canada, and I would carry that every time I'm camping with bears. Okay, I got some blue nitrile gloves here for working on the bike or when it rains. They don't weigh much, don't take up much space. I will bring them again. And here's some other items. Ooh, that one's popped open. That's pretty gross. White dielectric grease and some clear RTV silicone. More items that I picked up to work on the bike, and I just brought them along because I already had them. And that's the contents of that one. All right, on to the other side. Baby wipes. Yeah, always good to have. The longest point I went without taking a shower was 5 days. Yeah, it gets a little bit funky sometimes. Baby wipes, get yourself cleaned up pretty good between that and a gas station sink or whatever. Good to have. I'll always bring those. Refreshing at the end of the day. Poop shovel. I didn't ever use it. Probably wouldn't bring it again. Toilet paper. You know what? Almost every place I went had toilet paper. There was one time I had an emergency, had to hit a rest area, and they didn't have toilet paper. I always brought this in with me, so yes, I will bring that again. This is a bag full of various bug spray items. I use the hell out of the bug spray. Now, if I was to do it again, I might just find one that I'm happy with and bring a small amount of it, but I just had various ones and I brought them along. So not a big deal. I would bring it again. Hand warmers, never once used these. For some reason, I bring these on almost every trip I go on, and I never use them. I don't know why I keep bringing them, probably because I have them. They don't take up much space, but I never use them. And these may not even work anymore. I don't know if there's a date on them. It says something 2018. Chances are they don't even work. Chem light, never used it. It's small, doesn't take up much space. I kind of figured, you know, if the bike breaks down. Another chem light. These might not even work either. Oh, look at that. I found this needle nose pliers in, where the hell were we at? Oregon? Rufus, Oregon. When we camped there, I found these and I threw them in the tank bag and I forgot all about them. I guess I'd just add that to tools. The magnetic tank bag. So this is almost always on my bike as well. I really like having a tank bag just for the versatility of it. You know, I have a place to put a few things. So I would say the majority of the stuff that's in this is always in this, but we'll discuss it as we go here. My little battery bank backup. Actually, my buddy Robert Roy gave me this right before the trip. I have another one, but since he gave me this one, I use this one quite often. Actually, I use this every day, except for when I was staying somewhere with electricity. But every day I was in the tent, I use this thing because I charged up my helmet, my Bluetooth helmet. In fact, I'm going to use it right now, plugging it into the camera. Very useful to have, and having two of them was nice. Even though I never needed two of them. Got some Tic Tacs for staying fresh for interacting with the locals. My Spot GPS tracker. So those of you who are members of my channel, maybe you followed me on this. I know a couple people did. I got this primarily for my family to keep an eye on me and make them feel a little bit more at ease. Because this thing, you can track your location by GPS, and then also it has the SOS button here, which if something bad happened and I was out of cell phone range, this thing can still communicate. And it also has a texting feature, which I can communicate when I'm outside of cell phone range. I primarily bought this for traveling up in Alaska and Canada, thinking I wasn't going to have that good a service. Now in Canada, I had really good phone service, surprisingly. So having it was still a nice peace of mind. And I can use this for lots of my other adventures, backpacking and dirt biking and that sort of thing. So I purchased this for the trip, and besides the early on when I had to do some updating on the software on this thing, on the firmware, it performed flawlessly. So initially I was a little upset about it, but after that it's worked well. And I got a message just the other day that there's a new software or firmware update on this thing, so I need to get that updated. Charge cable for that, and just some earplugs and other stuff. My hat, I wear that all the time. That will actually stays in here all the time. My beanie, anytime it was a little bit chilly, I wore this, and I like to wear this when I'm sleeping in the tent at night, almost every night except for when it's really hot. That won't stay in here. My sunglasses, I wore these quite often as well. These will stay in here. Sunscreen for my nose, which is like the only thing that gets exposed on my helmet. That stays in here. There's some snacks. I don't see the ants on them. I got a little thing of baby wipes. I picked this up somewhere. It was like a freebie at a event or something. And you know what? That might just stay in there too. Here's something I almost always have in here as well, is what I call a time killer. You can have this or a book. If the motorcycle breaks down somewhere and you're out of cell phone range and you're waiting forever and you don't have a way to charge your phone, you just sit there looking at the sky. You can take a nap, but I like to have something to just pass the time. Now, I've used, books or like puzzles or whatever, items like this in the past when I've been in situations like that. It just helps take your mind off of it. So that's something that's almost always in here as well. In here is a bag of just miscellaneous crap. I've got super glue, a lighter, a flashlight, there's wire, electrical tape. This is always in here as well. Or there's a tire gauge. This is always in here. A little bit of money here. I think it's like 20 bucks and some change. So if you hit up a parking meter and you don't have change, it's always in here. And then let's say you lose your wallet and you're a little bit away from home. I think I got 25 bucks wrapped up in here. That's enough to at least get a tank or two of gas. That's always in there, but don't tell anyone, because then everyone will know and they'll just steal it from me. Oh, well, I think that's another tool I picked up somewhere and I just left it in there. That's not going to stay in there. There's another, I think that lighter is dead. Let's see if it works. Yeah, that's going in the trash. Zip ties can always save the day. Pencil without an eraser. Well, I don't make any mistakes, and we'll just throw that away. What else we got in here? Oh, there you go. Just in case you don't hit up the liquor store before you're camping for the night. I think this was in the clearance at the liquor store. $1. And let's see. Well, there's my hat pin. I was looking for that. And my registration, which will stay in there. So a majority of this stuff just is always in here. So we'll just put it right back and set that aside and move on to the next items. All right, beside my atlas, this is mostly what I had in my top box. Every once in a while I'd have a bottle of water, or maybe one of the snacks that I would grab out of my food items, or sometimes my hat would end up in there, but for the majority of the time, this is all I really had in my top box. I like to keep it available to put my helmet in when we stopped. So let's see, these are the gloves that I purchased in Alaska. I purchased some waterproof gloves, and I gotta say I'm really disappointed with them. The liner ripped out of them like on the second or third day, and I'm really not gonna go back to Anchorage to return these gloves. So I'll probably wear them a few more times. They're very comfortable, and I think the waterproof part of them works fine, even with the liner being jacked up, but they're hard to get on and off now that the liner is getting messed up. I'll maybe see if I can do a little bit of repair on them, but who knows. These are the cold weather gloves I brought along from the start, and I only wore these probably 2 days. Would I bring them again? Maybe. I think if I was to do it again, I would try to find a good pair of warm-ish waterproof gloves, and then along with my heated grips, it would probably be good enough. I don't know. I didn't run into as much cold weather as I thought I would, even going all the way up to the Arctic Ocean. But every trip is different, so you just never know. I brought along these glove liners, which I think, like I said, if I had a good pair of waterproof warmer gloves, you could put these glove liners in with them and add. I wore those a couple times. Let's see, this is for my heated gear. Actually, this is an extension that works good with the heated gear to plug in, but this actually goes to my tire pump. And I never wore this. It's like a balaclava. Goes over your head. That's where your schnoz fits, right in there, see? I never wore this, but I've used this actually local in San Diego. So I guess it's nice to have, and every trip is different. You just can't say that you would or wouldn't use it. And then my buddy loaned me this heated jacket. Now, I did use the heated jacket. I used it a couple times. One was because my riding suit was not as rainproof as it was advertised to be, and I was soaking wet and I was cold. So I used it then, and then I used it another time basically just because I had it. If I didn't have this, I probably would have just layered up and I would have been okay. But having heated gear, it's just nice. It's a nicety. So I think I'm gonna end up buying one of these heated jackets. I did bring along the heated pants, and I never used them. And I sent those actually home with my wife in Chicago. So I held on to this even though I knew I'd be riding across America in August and it would probably be hot, but I still kept it. All right, next we'll go through my dry bag. I purchased this dry bag about 1 or 2 days before I went on this trip, and I've never used one before. I have a lot of storage space on my bike, and I've never done more than a 4 or 5 day trip on a motorcycle, and I've always been able to fit almost everything in the bags, and if it didn't fit, possibly the tent, or maybe the tent and the sleeping bag, I'd put in a duffel bag and just strap that to the back of my seat. So all that being said, I bought this at Cycle Gear, and I really like this dry bag. It was nice to have all of my living equipment in one space that was easy to get to, so if I got to the campsite late, all I had to do was pull this off and I knew my tent, my sleeping bag, my pillow, all that was in here. So I've gone over this before, but we'll pull out items and take a look at them. This is a collapsible chair, and this thing is nice. It's small. You see it's about a hand and 2 hands, about 2 hands big. But it's pretty nice. If you're camping in the middle of nowhere, which I did many times, you know, not in a campsite, nice to have a place to sit. So that definitely is coming with me if I can make room for it on another trip. My tent, I love this tent. This is a, where's the name on it? MSR Hubba Hubba 2-person tent. I love this tent. It's easy to put up. It packs down fairly small. Now, for one person, do you need a 2-person tent? No. And if you're space conscious and you don't have the room for it, a 1-person tent is going to be considerably smaller and lighter than this. But for me, I was able to put all of my gear inside of the tent if I wanted or needed to, like when it's raining. This is nice to have. This tent has big vegetables on both sides as well, so I really like bringing it when I can make the room for it. My sleeping bag. This doesn't pack down as small as some sleeping bags, but then again, it also was not as expensive as some sleeping bags. So if I was willing to spend a couple $100 more for a sleeping bag, it would probably pack down to half of this size. Everything fits in my bag, so I'm happy with it. I was never cold. I was actually hot more often than cold, so the sleeping bag works pretty good. I've camped in this sleeping bag down to about 25 degrees. Now 25 degrees, it's not warm, but if you wear a beanie on your head and you zip it up and close it off around your neck, you'll stay warm enough. There's my pillow, and I also have a silk sleeping bag liner in here, which I used that a couple times just to sleep in that when it was hot. And I have also have, what else is in here? Oh, this is my magnetic tent light. Put this on top of the tent, and you have like a dome light, but it's starting to fail. I've had this for a long time. It's a little bit bigger item. There's probably nicer ones out there. I'm gonna replace that. I definitely will bring that again because it's nice to have. Just turn it on, and you don't have to have the headlamp going around everywhere in your tent. My cooking equipment, my camp stove, and my pot, and all the other little items, this will always come with me. I'm very happy with my little camp stove that I bought. If you watched my earlier videos, maybe you saw it, but I'll pop it out of here real quick. So it uses these fuel canisters, and they last a long time. No reason to have more than one unless you're going somewhere like, I don't know where you would go where you couldn't get one, because everywhere in the US and Canada you could get those things. Walmart carried them. So this is my camp stove. Here's my hand so you can see how big it is. That's the size of the camp stove. This thing works great. Can of soup fits right on top of there. If that doesn't work, I need to make water for my coffee. Fits right on top of there. This screws right into that fuel I just showed you. And this thing was about $7, something like that. Fits nicely inside of here. Ta-da. Love it. That will be going with me every time. My air mattress, I bought this right before I left as well. I only blew it up once and tested it on my living room floor. This thing is very nice. 76 inches long, 30 inches wide. It's about 4 inches, 3.5, 4 inches thick. Plenty comfortable. You can sleep on your side on this thing. Much nicer than my old Thermarest that I had. The bear canister and all my food items that are remaining in there. Now this thing takes up a lot of space. It's a little bit bulky, it's a little bit heavy, but camping in bear country, it's nice to have this. Just you feel better about yourself with it. And it also makes a place to sit. You can sit on it. It's pretty sturdy, so it's nice to have. And the last item out of the dry bag is something that my sister made for me. She made me a little pillow here because, well, she makes these pillows. And she heard me complaining a little bit about my camp pillow. This thing was pretty nice. Thanks, sis. I appreciate it. I only got to use it one day, but I appreciate it. So let's see, all I have left is the side bags. So I'm gonna clear this out the way. We'll move one of those in here and we'll get going on those. Yeah, all this stuff here was actually in the left side saddlebag on my bike. So let's start going over this stuff and see what I used and what I didn't. I brought a whole bunch of extra Ziploc bags. They don't take up a whole lot of space. I probably brought way too many of them. I mean, they fit in the bottom of the bag. I did use a few of them. I gave a couple to my riding buddy Ken. It's hit or miss whether I'd bring those again. A couple of big trash bags. I always bring these as well. I probably would bring them every time. Yeah, I mean, it's good rain gear if you need it. I don't know why I never thought about it when I needed rain gear. MRE. I like to have one of these stashed away just in case. This will probably always go with me as well. They're not amazing. They're not, some of them are okay. But having some food just in case. There was at least one time on the trip when Ken and I were riding down the Dempster Highway when we stopped when we were not expecting to. And we spent the night, and I ate an MRE that night. If you always have food on the bike and you're always planning that you may have an unplanned stop, then you'll be okay. So having this in the bottom of the bag, yeah, it weighs a pound maybe, took up a little bit of space, but on a long trip like this, it was nice to have. I brought this little backpack thinking I might use it. I think I did use it one time, but I probably could have got away with something else. This I wouldn't bring again, but not a big deal. I had this Nalgene bottle full of water. This is still the water that I filled up in this thing 2.5 months ago here. This goes along with the food item. This was buried in the very bottom of my side bag. And if I was stopped unexpectedly and I needed water, and let's say I got stuck for 2 days, it was nice to know I had this. And having the space to bring it, I would definitely bring it again. That all depends on how you're packed up. Tennis shoes, I like to have these. I almost always bring flip-flops. This is the first time I brought flip-flops and tennis shoes. It was nice to have tennis shoes. When it was a little bit cooler out, I could just put these on and leave my socks on. If you're wearing socks with flip-flops, it's uncomfortable as hell. And I'll get to the other half of this later, actually. All right, this is a Frog Togs bag, but it's not Frog Togs. I bought Frog Tog rain gear, and it shredded within about 10 miles. This is my replacement rain gear I bought. I put it in the Frog Tog bag when I found out that my riding suit was not as waterproof as it was advertised. Now, if my rain suit was waterproof, I wouldn't need these, but I wore them a couple times. I'm glad I purchased them. See what I got in here. Oh, my floppy hat. Look at that. I had 3 hats. I probably could have done away with at least one of my hats for sure. Having the beanie is nice, and then having another hat that you can wear is nice. I don't know why. I'm a hat person. It's a family thing. Don't judge me. Mesh laundry bag. So that's if you're on the road for a few days and you're bringing the proper amount of clothing, which is just the right amount, not too many. You can hand wash your clothing in a bathroom and then put it in this, tie this to the bike, and let it dry in here. You know how many times I did that on this trip? 0. This is a microfiber bath towel. I use that a couple times. It's nice to have. But I did end up getting another towel along the way. You always need 2 shoes unless you only got 1 foot. This whole bag is a bunch of stuff that my sister gave me. So this is excess items, but I just weighed it in here because I gave some stuff to my wife when I was in Chicago, so I figured it would be more realistic. My toiletries kit. I could probably cut this down and make it a little bit easier, but since I already had the bag and everything was here, I used everything that's in here for the most part. Only thing I didn't use, which I could have, and I kind of forgot that I even had this, is tied here, is a little microfiber washcloth. And my atlas, I threw that in here because it wasn't in the top box at the time, but I just figured I should weigh it. My buddy gave me that atlas when I was in Montana. My buddy gave me that atlas because all I had was paper maps, a couple of them. I didn't have all the states. So thank you very much, Mike, for giving me that. I appreciate it. I used it quite often. All right, the last item I had in here was this this bag here. And well, I had that mesh backpack. I could have used this as a backpack, but this just has some miscellaneous. I was having trouble with that. Miscellaneous stuff. So I had an e-reader at the start and it broke. So my mom gave me this book to read, which I read a little bit of it. Always nice to have a time waster. You get to camp early. Miscellaneous items. There we go. I have another battery bank, and I did use both of them at one point or another. I'll put that one up here in case I need to charge my phone. My phone charger. I use this many times. I like this one because I can plug it into a car. I can plug it into a wall. It's got 2 ports. So I use that many times. Glad I had it. Let's see, just some paper to write on. This thing I brought along kind of as a last minute thing in case we went somewhere when it was Ken and I both riding together and they had one outlet and then we could plug in multiple phone chargers on here to keep our equipment charged up. Never used it. Didn't really bother me to have it. And I had this additional plug-in phone charger which I never used either. But neither one of these really bothered me, but you know, when you start adding up ounces that add into pounds, if you need to go a little bit more lightweight, you start looking at things like this and deciding whether you need them or not. I brought my passport. I had a passport card as well, but don't tell anybody about this here. But this was my secret stash here. So I kept some extra green in there and some extra credit cards and an extra ID in here, just in case. Let's say I lost my wallet. If I lost my wallet in Canada, I would have been screwed getting out. Or if I lost my wallet in the East Coast, I would have been screwed getting back to the West Coast. But having extra credit cards and a couple extra Benjamins in there, that helped me not worry about losing my items. Unfortunately, this just came along with me and I never used it. My headlamp, I've had this headlamp, this, I guess it's an LED stream light. A friend of ours got some deal on these many years ago, and I think I had 3 or 4 of them, and I use the hell out of these. They're probably not the best ones on the market, but it works pretty good. I've had it, I always use it. I replaced the batteries on it about a week before I came back from this trip. So a headlamp like this is great to have. I always had this at the very top of the bag, so it was the first thing I could grab when I got to a campsite. Some additional charging cords. I think I had two each, Apple style and micro USB. I brought this bandana along thinking, hey, maybe I could use that. I never used it, but it doesn't really take up much space. Headphones. I think I did use those once, but don't really need them. And then there's just some additional crap in here that I acquired along the way. You know how that happens. All right, I'll clear this out. We'll get the right-hand saddlebag, and that'll be everything off the bike. Now here's an item not many people think to bring along with them. You gotta have a dachshund along with you. Well, not everyone brings a dachshund, but you know, they could be helpful in case you run into badgers. You never know. Good boy, Wilbur. So on to the right side bag. Let's see what we all had in there. Hatchet. I liked having this. I used it to cut up a little bit of firewood and mostly to pound in tent stakes, and then also sometimes if I just felt uncomfortable when I'm in the tent, I slept with it by my side. Yeah. I forgot I even had this in the bike. It's just some backup registration paperwork and my warranty paperwork for some items on the bike, which fortunately I never needed. My riding buddy Ken gave me this, and this is a thing that you get wet and you put it around your neck when it's really hot. You can just kind of pull it over your head, actually. Pull it over your head. And that worked amazing. I only used it on the very last day of the trip, but it was over 100 degrees for about 300 miles. And having this wet around your neck just changed the riding from miserable to comfortable. So it's small, easy to pack up, nice to have, no problem. Another trash bag on this side. Like I said, maybe good to have as a backup. I had 2 of these water bladder. These are platypus. They're 1 liter each. So I had 2 of these always on the right-hand side of my bike, right-hand saddlebag. I actually started with 3, and the other one I had was leaking a little bit, so I could never have it full. And I never got beyond 1 1/4 of them used at any time, because you could always stop and fill these up. Any place you can get gas, you can get water, pretty much. So I cut down to only having 2 of the bladder ones and 1 of the hard Nalgene style. I probably could have got away with 1, but I always went with the what if. Let's see what I got here. I got a bag with a bag in it. And I think these are items that I didn't need anymore. So this is stuff that I brought too much of. Extra pair of socks, an extra shirt that I got for running a 5K in Alaska, and I just drug it along. I should have just threw it away. I have another long sleeve textile. What is this? I don't even know what brand this is. Anyway, textile shirt. And then here's kind of my most embarrassing items that I drug along with me, because I convinced myself that I was going to go running on this trip. And I went 1 time, but I honestly could have ran a 5K in jeans. But I brought running shorts, running socks, and even my armband so I could listen to music. So kind of embarrassed that I drug this stuff along more than anything else, because I convinced myself that, oh yeah, I might go running. And I never really did. So it's kind of embarrassing to me. I forgot to bring my fleece from home, so I bought this fleece sweater at a thrift shop for like $3. I didn't need it after I got out of Alaska. I didn't wear this thing since cutting across Canada a little bit. I wore it a couple times, and I probably could have just tossed it, but it goes against my nature to toss it for whatever reason. This bag here has my only fairly nice clothing in it. I wore the same pair of REI camping pants the entire time. So I brought another pair of REI camping pants. These are a little lighter shade. My other ones were green. And a decent collared pullover shirt, nothing fancy. And I wore these 1 time. I brought them specifically because my riding buddy Ken, who I rode part of this with, said that his brother was getting married. I was invited to go. I honestly could have got away with wearing any of my cleaner items out of my wardrobe, but I wore it. I looked okay. In this stuff sack here, I have these are just like almost like sweatpants, but a little different material, kind of just casual pants. I would sleep in these a lot or hang out around the camp in these a lot. And then socks and underwear. So after riding for a while, I just realized I had way too much clothing items. So I went down to 3 pairs of underwear, and I get these kind. They're made of that polyester type material, so you can just wash these in the sink anywhere you go. A little bit of hand soap, wash them, wring them out, and they'll dry in a couple hours. And I like to wear wool socks. Those are my favorite. I do the same thing with those. I just wash them, put a little bit of hand soap on them, wring them out, let them dry. They'll dry overnight. I went to 3 pairs of each, socks and underwear and t-shirts, but I started out with about 4 or 5. I can't remember where I was at, but I had too many. And the same with shirts. I had way too many shirts. So let's add 1 on my body. Then I had 2, God, how many of these did I have? I had 2 long sleeves and maybe 4 short sleeves. And I cut it down to 3 short sleeves and 1 long sleeve. And surprisingly enough, the long sleeve shirt like that was better than the short sleeve one when it's hot. I brought these shorts along. I probably could have got by without having these because the REI pants that I got converted into shorts. So they kind of took up a little bit of space. Yeah, there's another shirt. And I brought some swimming trunks along. I wore these a couple times. So having these and having those other shorts and then having the REI shorts is just too much. I had too many sets of clothing. There's some dirty clothes still. I gotta do laundry. This is an air compressor. I used this thing a couple times. I bought it right before the trip. It's nice to have. I'll definitely hold on to that. That'll stay in my bike at all times. Now I have tubeless tires on my bike, and I have a tubeless repair kit on the motorcycle mounted under one of the side covers, but I brought along a tube, and this was kind of a last minute decision to bring this along, and I'm really glad I did, because my riding buddy Ken had a tire failure and he forgot to bring his tubes. He didn't intentionally forget. I don't think many people intentionally forget anything, but he forgot. I chewed his ass a little bit, and then I said, oh, wait a minute, let's try my tube, and it worked, so I'm glad on that. I brought along this little cheap multimeter last minute as a tool item. Let me see, it still works. We were talking about using it one time, but we never did. Now, tools and first aid kit is the type of thing where you could say it was wasted space, but it's not. I mean, I drag this along with me on every trip and I never use it, I'll be happy. There's my tool kit. Never opened it one time. There's my tire tools, wrapped up neatly in an old dirty sock. Never opened it, but I used Ken's, so I guess I can't really count that as never using it. I brought along some extra strap items. These don't weigh hardly anything. They're just nice to have in case you pick something up or something breaks off. This I kind of threw in at the last minute, a tie-down strap. Now, this could have came in handy, but it wasn't long enough. I need to go through my tie-down straps and find like a ratcheting tie-down, or even one of these cam lock style, that fits all the way around a tire. The point being is, if you blow the tire off the bead and you need to get the bead to seat, you're never going to get it to seat with these low volume, small 12-volt air compressors. But if you tie it up around the tire with the tie-down strap, you can maybe get the tire to seat on the bead a little bit and then get some air in it. I found this carabiner and this rope in Alaska, and it's just been sitting in the bottom of my bag the entire time. And a piece of clear tubing. I threw that in at the last minute before I left on this trip, just in case we needed to siphon some fuel out of something. Now, I probably should find a longer piece of this and then just coil it up. Not a bad idea. It doesn't weigh much, doesn't take up a lot of space. And this is another item I threw in at the last minute. It's just like a cigarette lighter adapter type thing, because I installed a USB charging port on my bike, but it's a cheap Chinese one, And I was afraid if that broke, then I wouldn't be able to charge up my items. I mean, obviously I could survive without having my helmet or my phone, but we live in that kind of an age where it's almost like you feel like it's a necessity. So I brought this along as a backup. I really could have just hooked it up onto the bike and had it there, and it wouldn't hurt anything, but I was too lazy to do that. So, I mean, how fun would have that been to do on the road? Never had to. Carried it along for no reason. Oh, and this towel. I found this towel when we were in a laundromat, and I washed it, and I used it many times after that instead of my microfiber towel. I like the microfiber towel, but it's just something about having a towel. So this is kind of a crappy towel, which is going to go into my rag bin now, but I used it quite often. All right, so there you have it. That's all of the crap that I brought along with me on my trip. And in the end, I honestly wouldn't change a whole lot. But everyone's trip is going to be different, depending on the vehicle that you're taking. You know, if you're a motorcycle traveler and you don't have a big bike, let's say you were riding something like this Honda behind me. You could do a multi-day trip on a vehicle like that, and I have. Well, you just have to change your whole outlook on how you're packing. You're not going to bring all the stuff that I brought along, and part of it is going to be you're going to sacrifice comfort, and part of it is going to be you're going to, you know, pick up food along the way rather than cook it yourself or have food. It just really depends, and in the end, I'm glad that I had the big bike. There was only a couple times where I felt like the size of the bike was a hindrance to me, but I also plan not to get into situations like that. So if you have a big motorcycle, well, then you got to stay off the single track trails. If you want to ride single track stuff, you can get yourself a dual sport bike of some sort. There's one underneath that cover as well. But at that point, you're going to be limited to the amount of space that you have to carry items. Or you got to get a little bit more creative, or you got to buy better, smaller, lighter gear. So it's going to cost some money, or, you know, take some time to acquire it. But in the end, there's very little that I would change. I never once was without something really that I needed. So, or if I was able to overcome it. So, you know, just look at your situation, look at the items that you have, decide how you want to make it work. But anyway, that's all that. And the next item on my agenda is going to be motorcycle maintenance. It's time to get this thing taken apart. We'll move the Space Ghost here off of the lift, and we'll get the Yamaha on there. And we'll start taking her apart and cleaning her up and getting all caught up on maintenance. My front tire, it's kind of crappy with the sun here. My front tire just made it. I mean, I really should have replaced it. But 17,000 miles out of the front tire is pretty good. So anyway, get out there and find your adventure. Adios.